Welcome to another episode of just me literally giving art advice I struggled to find when I started drawing. In today's video, we're going to be talking about drawing figures and human anatomy. So this is a simple funnel that I use anytime I think of drawing characters or simple figures. If you watch my previous video on the fundamentals of art and taking each fundamental and studying that for a couple of weeks, this is more like a part 2 of that video. For this, you're going to be studying each of the different principles in the funnel, starting from gesture drawing on different weeks and getting all the way to lighting and shading on different weeks. Most artists always have an image or pose in their head or an idea they want to draw, but when it gets to actually drawing it out, they're immediately disappointed with what comes out. Which is why understanding gesture is the most important step when it comes to drawing figures. Basically, drawing gestures is turning off your brain so you don't see all the different forms and muscles of the body and focus only on the action and movement the body or pose is making. You can literally achieve this with a few lines and it shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Training your eyes to see the action the body is making is the first step it takes to learning gesture. Next is understanding how to draw it out with a few lines. It really shouldn't be accurate at this stage, but should show a strong line of action to guide the pose. You should have a goal for the final look of your image if you're going for a more realistic approach or a toned down, more stylized, simplified look for your character. You can take a look at videos from Stan Proco on the Proco YouTube channel. He has really great, fantastic videos on drawing gesture, and those will really help you when trying to understand how to draw gesture. His drawings always have a certain flow to them and you can feel the action that he's trying to convey whatever pose the character or figure he's drawing is making. Mainly because you can see all the natural curves in the body and he uses either an S curve or a C curve to portray that line of action. That is exactly what you need to capture in your gesture drawings. There really isn't any right or wrong way to do gesture drawings, but you always have to capture the essence or feeling of the pose you are drawing and always show some form of movement. You should be able to tell the pose immediately you take a look at it. Now this is where things get a little bit confusing. Some artists start with drawing gestures and then drawing the shapes over the gestures, while other artists just start off with the shapes directly. Both of these methods require a lot of practice and patience, but I believe after drawing gestures for some time, you can immediately be able to start off by just drawing shapes directly. There's two ways to look at drawing the body with basic shapes. The first is the easiest and simplest method, where you have a circle for the head, a circle for the shoulders, a square for the torso, and cylinders for the arms and legs. Some artists might use different shapes depending on the industry they are or the career path they choose. So you might find some animators using squares and triangles to form their bodies, but you can literally use any shape that is much more easier for you to construct your own figures with. It all boils down to what is comfortable for you and what's easier for you to use. Using shapes is a great approach and is very easy to remember, especially for people that are just starting out with drawing figures with basic shapes or even just drawing figures in general. Practice using shapes to understand how to simplify the muscles and forms of the body. So instead of seeing an arm and a shoulder attached to it, you should just see one straight cylinder, and instead of seeing the chest and the stomach and all the abs on there, you should just be seeing a square for the torso and maybe a little smaller square to signify where the stomach can be and another square just to signify where the pelvic can be. Later on, you can learn how to draw anatomy on top of that, and we'll get to that in this video as well. And the reason why using shapes is great for drawing figures is you can easily show the direction and volume of whatever form you're trying to draw. And you can do this just by drawing lines across each of the cylinders or each of the forms, just to show where the form is turning to and how it's being affected by perspective, instead of just thinking of how to draw the same muscle or the same arm with a lot of muscles attached on it. You can just literally just draw a cylinder with some lines across it to show how it's coming forward in perspective or going backward or moving away from the body. Then later on, you can proceed into drawing all the muscles on top of that cylinder you have already established. The idea is to keep things simple and practice gradually before proceeding to the next step. You don't need to rush anything at all. It's better to learn slowly, because if you can draw it slowly, then you can draw it fast. The second method is where you use shapes to convey the personality of a character. This is mostly common in character designs for animations and games. Shapes are used to create clear silhouettes of the characters so you can easily read their design without seeing what the character looks like, even if the character is just in plain black. If you take the most iconic characters and just turn them to plain black and just take a look at their silhouettes, you can still be able to recognize who or which character that is without even seeing the entire image. Shapes in design need to be clear and readable and also pass off a certain feeling or emotion. Focus on the shapes and take a look at the silhouette from time to time to notice if the design elements you're adding on your character are breaking apart the silhouette and it's not very readable, and then you can adjust or correct that till you have a much more readable design and silhouette of your character. You always have to draw figures and design your characters with shape language in mind, but of course you can always just do whatever you like. I really can't force you. No, seriously, it's fine. No pressure at all. There are many other artists that use shape language in their drawings, and one of my favorites is Valerie Garnace. She uses a lot of shapes in her drawings and still manages to keep everything looking very fluid with a lot of motion, and her drawings are super cute. You guys should go check out her Instagram account. She has a lot of drawings there, and if you just take a look at any of her drawings, you can immediately just see the silhouette of her characters. All the silhouettes are super readable. They're very readable. You can immediately tell the essence of the character and whatever pose she's drawing from. Also, she has been kind enough to let me use some of her art for my thumbnails, so let's put a round of applause together for. Go give her a follow on Instagram and make sure you leave a comment telling her to update her Tumblr with some more art. I'm not going to lie to you, anatomy is super boring when you start learning it. You have to force yourself to learn all these muscle names like quadriceps, triceps, brachialis, and then you end up drawing a ton of clothes just to cover the entire character. Well, as boring as it may seem, you still actually have to learn it, since there is no knowledge that is not power, right? I learned anatomy by literally copying all the drawings in anatomy books. There are many books that cover anatomy for artists, but two of my favorite books are Figure Drawing for All It's Worth by Andrew LOOMIS and Human Design, Figure Drawing Figure Drawing and Design by Michael Hampton. Both of these books are super great books, and those are my favorites. I remember using both books for a couple of months and drawing every image in both of these books on different days, on different weeks during each of my study sessions. I do prefer the book from Michael Hampton because it focuses more on anatomy and learning the muscles, and he pretty much explains how the muscles work and how they move, stretch and contrast and all that. He also talks a bit about gesture as well in the book, so you can still check that out. I think that will be the book to go for if you just purely want to learn only muscles and anatomy. Then for the LOOMIS book, I use that to focus on how to draw the forms, how to light the forms, and how to draw muscles over basic shapes. Ideally, you want to use the books interchangeably, so whenever I'm drawing from the LOOMIS, I'll use the knowledge I've learned from the Michael Hampton about how the muscles are actually structured, the names of the muscles, the shapes of the muscles, and then I'll take that knowledge and use that to draw over the basic shapes while looking at the book from Andrew LOOMIS. This is going to take some time, so just take it easy and just keep on practicing using both books for a couple of weeks. You don't need to rush anything. Try to remember the most important muscles, like the ones on the arm, the shoulder, the chest, the back, and the legs, which is pretty much all the muscles. But those are mostly the most important ones that you are going to need to remember what they look like, at least, because you're going to be drawing most of those muscles whenever you want to draw a character or a figure of head. Then if you need any more detail or any more, if you're trying to nail a much more realistic style, then you can always pull up reference of a bodybuilder or someone playing a sport and then take a look at how the muscles are working for that person and then use that reference in your own work. If you find yourself stuck and not seeing any progress in your work, I'll suggest you break down the studies to different body parts per week and then focus on different muscle groups for different weeks and gradually just make sure you're progressing and seeing if you have actually learned the muscle groups for that week. If you still find yourself not able to understand the shapes, you can repeat the same muscle group for another week and just make sure you're seeing progress before you actually move on and start start focusing on another muscle group. Try to draw from the books, then flip a page and try to see if you can draw that same image or that same muscle off head without looking at the reference. That's the only way to make sure that you're actually learning and taking in all that information, so you don't just forget it after doing all those studies. You can practice doing this multiple times a day or various times within the week for each of the muscle groups that you are studying for that week. Some artists are advised to draw the skeleton to learn and understand bone structure, but I didn't, because I really didn't see any immediate need for that. Of course, if you want to learn that, that's totally fine. And if you don't, whenever that comes up, you can always just pull up some reference and actually draw from that. One thing I learned from listening to professional artist interviews is to always carry a small sketchbook around so you can draw from life and observe how people are posing in real life, and then just taking quick studies, just taking quick sketches just to nail the pose or gesture, the action, that whatever the person is doing. This will really help you when it comes to just drawing figures in, say, a comic book, or just filling up random figures in a particular scene that you're drawing. I'm not able to leave my house to go and practice outside, so if you leave a like on this video, I'll be able to leave my house. So make sure you leave a like on the video so I can leave my house and go outside. Wow, thank you. I can go outside now. I went outside. I didn't like it. This is pretty much the most advanced technique, and that's why I put it at the top of the tier list. So it's pretty much going to be the last thing that you should start learning. Using light and shadow to depict forms and anatomy is a great way to show understanding of the entire human figure and how the muscles work together. You'll find a lot of professional artists drawing this way when they're doing sketches or just live figure drawing sessions. The key thing to look out for here is the shapes the shadows create around the muscles and forms of the body, and then drawing them out carefully and shading them as just one flat tone. It's good to start off with just using two tones, black and white, and then gradually when you've learned more about values, you can then proceed into using multiple tones and adding more light into the shadows. I think some art schools and ateliers teach artists this drawing technique, but you can always study other artists to kind of learn how they use it in their work and how you can use that and manipulate that same technique and apply it into your own drawings. Notice where they place the darkest shadows and also where they place the terminator to separate transitions between light and shadow across the muscles and forms of the body. Practice doing this by drawing from life, maybe have your friends pose for you, or by even using photos as well. This is literally where you can flex all the knowledge you learned from using all the anatomy books. If you still find yourself struggling to remember a muscle, you can always go back to the books and just read them up or draw from them to refresh your memory, and try to see if you can remember that off head by drawing it again without looking at the book, and then you can come back into your study and use that knowledge and see if you can apply that into the study you were drawing before. Now, once you've understood lighting and shading enough, at this stage you should be able to make good drawings by combining simple gesture and then just using some shadows to show the entirety of the human form and human figure. Your shading should be able to show the anatomy of the body by cutting into some muscle groups and forms all across the body. For comic book artists or artists with a simplified style, you can also do this as well by using thicker lines to show where shadows fall on your line art, and also using hatching or cross hatching to show the transition from shadow to light. Just check out a lot of other comic book artists. You always see these little small strokes or cross hatching in their work. Just make sure you're having fun with it. There's no point in starting to learn something if you're not having fun with it on the way. So don't let art stress you at all. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching. Remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I will see you in the next video. Peace.